and I called George, and he had biblical verses all over his body, like written Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. And I just remembered that from if we were playing cards in the summer and he had his shirt off, we'd read his body and just joke with him. And I said, he must have read a book. To have that, he must have at least read the Bible. And I called him up and I said, can you send me in some books? And he said, sure. What are you into? Big boobs, big asses, What do you? So I said, no. I said, I'm
wrong
looking,
book.
Yeah, I said, I'm looking to read a real book. So he said to me, what book, what do you want to read? I said, I have no idea. I never read a book in my life, George. Maybe you could go to the store and tell the girl, maybe there's a girl in the store, you could tell her about me and send me some books. And he sent me in a couple of weeks later. I was playing cards with the mob guys, and I got called to the package room, went downstairs, and it was, I opened up my package. It was a biography on Napoleon, Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler.
Wow.
And Caesar's Gallic Wars.
Wow.
So I'm like, whoa, I know now. I didn't know what
These
I was
were your
for.
first books.
Yeah.
You didn't start with Dr. Seuss.
No, yeah, exactly. Which is probably what I
Green
needed.
eggs and ham.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was like, now, what do I do now? I don't know. Where do I begin? I've heard maybe of these people vaguely, but I don't know who they are. And I called them up actually, and I said, where'd you get those ideas? I don't know if I could read these. And he said, well, I went to the store. He goes, yeah, I told the broad at the store. He goes, all about you. And she gave me those books. I said, what'd you tell her? He says, I told her you was short and bossy. He says, with that, yeah, 3 dictators.
Oh, that's hysterical. Okay. That's a wonderful story.
Yeah. So I read them. I did read them. And in the beginning, it was hard to read, period, let alone the material. And I remember getting distracted easily, and the words would blur on the page, and I'm young and I'm in jail and I'm thinking about girls and steak and cars, and I just can't keep my mind on focused on the page. But I stuck with it. I said my friend went out of his way to get him, and that was that part of me that had to be honorable to people, where if he did that, I would be doing a disservice to him not to read them. So at least let me, when he talks to me again, let me say, I read the books, thank you. So I said, I'm going to push through them and I'm going to read them, because he went to the store and got them for me. And I did. I pushed through. I didn't understand anything of what Hitler, the crackpot, was saying with the National Socialist movement. Eventually, I would read all the books about, the Nazis and Germany, the whole history of Germany. And I would read about Caesar and stuff and understand the whole Roman Empire. I'd read about the French Revolution and understand Napoleonic era. But back then, I just kind of just read it, and it was in there. I didn't realize it was, although I didn't think I understood anything, the more I read, the more pieces fit together, the more what I had read in those first 3 books kind of fit into place, the puzzle pieces in the brain. Somehow the neurons connect. And I was like, oh, wow, that's maybe it wasn't such a bad start. Maybe it was better than Dr. Seuss, which I was hoping for. And so I kept reading. I just stuck with it, and I fell in love with books, and eventually questioned through books, through understanding the sun rises and sets, reading science, reading philosophy, reading history, believing that there's a lifeline in history, that we are going somewhere as a civilization from the beginning of time till now. I felt like that there's some higher power in charge of all this, because I can't even get myself out of this cell, and somebody put the stars in the sky and the sun and the earth in its orbit, and the plants that grow from the earth give us nutrients in the body, and the circulatory system feeds the eye and the brain, etc. This is amazing, and there has to be a higher intelligence. So I started to look into religion, and I started with my own Catholicism, and I stuck with it for a while, and every night we were praying to somebody different, which was tough for me. We were praying to different saints, we were praying to the Blessed Mother of God, and I just was starting to get confused, and I said, this doesn't make all the sense in the world. I feel like there something maybe from my childhood, because my mother did believe in God, or something inside me, something innate that existed in me. I just believed there was one God. And although Catholicism might claim to be monotheistic, they're really not. You pray to a million different saints, you pray to anybody you feel like, and you pray to the Son of God to talk to God for you, etc. And I just didn't feel that was for me. And so I moved on to the next religion and the next, and I eventually read the Gospels, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads. I went through everything, and then I cut to the quick, and I said, wait a second, if monotheism is the religion that I believe somehow inside me is the real one, and here you have the three biggest monotheistic religions are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It just made sense to me that, knowing history too, the Jews came up with this monotheistic idea first, and then basically Christianity took the Torah, called it the New Testament, and added an addendum to it. Rather, called it the Old Testament, rather. Added an addendum to it, the New Testament, called it their own, and said the Jews are wrong, but God meant it for us. So kind of, I'm in jail. I mean, that's stealing. I'm in jail for stealing. That's the biggest theft in history. But anyway, I'm not knocking them. It's good parts of that. Religion makes people better in a lot of ways, and I'm not knocking it, but I'm just saying it wasn't for me. So I moved on, and I thought now the next thing was Islam. They really came last, and they have parts of the Torah in the Quran too. Kind of what Islam is Judaism and Christianity wrapped up into one with a new twist and new marketing idea. And I just felt like that wasn't for me either. I just, let me cut to the quick. If God gave the Jews the Torah, I don't think God made a mistake. And I just started to study the Torah, and it sat well with me. And that's kind of how I started my journey through Judaism.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how did all your mobster friends in jail respond to...
They thought I cracked up.
Because you went in one person.
Yeah.
And as you learn and you grow and your mind expands, you see the world differently. You're going to start relating to people.
Yeah.
Did it cause a problem? Did it
did
create
in the
some
beginning.
friction?
Yeah, in the beginning. So what happened was, in the beginning, and it's a great question, but man, you should be a psychologist. You're amazing. Yeah, you are actually, I guess, on the radio. But so that's a great question. So my friends did get, what happens is when somebody's going to snitch, the first thing they do is they usually go through, we could spot it. They go through these changes, mental changes, and because their mind is shifting away from us, knowing that they're going to betray us. And then one day they just get taken out of the prison in the middle of the night. And the next thing you know, they're in court testifying against us. So I saw this happen time and again. And I kind of braced myself for this new change I was going through. I'm not playing cards with them anymore. I'm not talking mob stuff. I'm reading, I'm studying, I'm pursuing religion. They're going to think I'm nuts. And that's exactly what happened. So in the beginning, they started with me a little jibes and stuff. And a couple of guys got a little bit nasty, but I was always a tough guy. So I always said, hey, listen, there's nothing wrong with me. You want to make a beef out of this step. We'll take care of it, me and you right now. And they'd be like, no, because most bullies are cowards. I know that. And that's what they're doing, bullying me. And I just made it clear to them, listen, my mind is where it's at. If I have to serve life, I will. I'm not ratting on anybody. I made these decisions with you guys. I'm going to live them through, follow them through to the end. If I could get out of here, I want to leave. I want to be done with the life. If I can't get out of here, I'm going to keep my mouth shut to the last minute and die in jail. And I made myself clear, and they understood it. And I said, do you see me here still with you? You don't see me out, getting escorted outside, do you? And I made it clear to them, and they understood it. And then through all the reading they'd see me doing, guys started to eventually come to me and say, like they'd ask bizarre questions in the beginning. Oh, when Napoleon fought Caesar, who won? And I'd say, well, it's 1,800 years apart. But it's a good question. Let me explain to you who might have won had they had the same technology at the time. And I would talk to them about all kinds of things. And then people would come to me and say, who's Shakespeare? Well, what did he do? Was he a saint, Shakespeare? No, Shakespeare wasn't a saint, but he was like a literary saint. And I'll tell you what he did, and I'll tell you some of the plays that he wrote. And I became like almost like a sage in jail, where a lot of older people would come to me. And then once the mob kind of understood that I didn't lose my mind, actually my mind was getting sharper, then I started to get even, there was a mob boss in there who came to me for advice about running his family, because I was always like a counselor to older guys, because I kind of saw things clearly by the grace of God. I had that if I had any knack, it was to kind of cut to the quick and see things clearly. So I always gave advice in the mob to older guys who would ask me, and they started doing that. And as long as it didn't tangle me up in a new conspiracy, I offered advice if it was benign. But if it something criminal, I'd just say, listen, you got to call that one on your own. I don't know what to tell you. Whereas I used to say, you got to do what you got to do, or whatever. But so that's kind of where I ended up, and I did gain their respect in the end.
Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, Louis, here you're now reading more about Judaism and finding out more. Did you then get in touch with a rabbi? Because there's so much learning, and there's so many layers, and there's so many depths that you have to go to. Yeah. How did it work for you?
Well, I ended up pleading guilty to 13 years. What happened was my snitch went into the witness protection program. The feds put him in the protection program, gave him a new identity in exchange for testifying against me. But I didn't know they were offering us 25-year pleas. In other words, if you cop out to the charges without going to trial, we'll give you 25 years. So I was like, all right, I could do 25 years. I'll take it if I have to, but let's prolong it. Told my co-defendants, there was 8 of us in jail together. So I told my crew, I go, let's prolong it as long as we can. Maybe we'll get a better deal if they don't want to try us, because we'll tie up a courtroom for months. And the government likes to keep things moving so we could lock up as many people as we can in the United States, which is what we do. We're a prison nation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a shame. But so anyway, we held out long enough where they eventually came down with a 13-year plea for me. And they said they'd give my co-defendants all less if I take the 13. So I said, fine, I'll take the 13. I went to jail, went to the penitentiary. My very first day in population in the maximum security penitentiary, the Aryan Brotherhood hacked to death and gutted 2 black Muslims. Yeah, I mean, just
that was your first
total
day
bloodbath.
there?
My first day, I just landed there. And somebody gives me a machete. This guy in my block gives me a machete. And I'm like, where did they made it out of a vent, an air duct, like a shutter on an air duct. But they also had machetes made. They call them bone crushers in the penitentiary. We had a steel shop, and in the penitentiary they make like lockers and beds. And in their spare time they make these machetes.
Is the warden not aware that this is happening?
Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe this myself. The warden's aware that there's constant violence in the penitentiary and there's murders now and then, but I couldn't believe that you could actually have lifers who were there for the most heinous crimes working in a metal shop. I mean, that to me is unbelievable still. But aside from that, yeah, there are weapons in every prison, and they shake down the prison on a regular basis to try to gather up the weapons. But the convicts are so industrious that they do have smart minds. They just put it to evil use, and they're so industrious that they make weapons out of nothing in a minute. I mean, in 2 minutes after a shakedown, everybody's armed again. So, for example, after the double homicide, the 2 guys are taken out, bloodied, gutted, and etc. And they brought in plastic chairs and took out all of our metal chairs so that we couldn't have metal weapons anymore. And the chairs weren't even the root of the weapons. It was from the metal shop. But anyway, they took those out, put in plastic chairs. A week or so later, they did a count, and there were like 3 chairs missing out of my tier block. I'm like, I'm even saying to myself, where did 3 chairs go? Well, the convicts cut the plastic chairs up and made plastic machetes out of the plastic chairs,
absolutely,
so that they could get around the metal detectors, because they had all metal detectors throughout the prison now. So just to get through the metal detectors, they had these 1 foot long plastic machetes, hard plastic. So but anyway, getting back on track, I had 13 years, and in there I kept reading Judaism. I kept reading about the world, biographies, history, etc., philosophy. I fell in love. I tried to balance myself as much as possible to read about as much as I could. And I also studied law. I went through 7 attorneys, hired and fired 7 attorneys, including the famed civil rights attorney, William Kunstler from America. I had the best lawyers money could buy. I went for a few $100,000 just in lawyers. And I paid for some of my co-defendants. I lent them a couple of $100,000. And in the end, the lawyers did nothing for me. And I deserved what I got, but I knew that somewhere there has to be some law to be able to maybe help me out. And I felt like in my newfound belief in God, I felt like if I really change my life, maybe God will give me a break if I'm sincere about it. And that's exactly what happened. I studied law, filed my own appeal with the Second Circuit Court of Appeals in the U.S., and reversed my own case from jail on a technicality. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, so I got out in 8.5 years instead of the
amazing.
13. Thank God, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you came out of jail, and was the world a different place?
Different place. The world seemed like, when you're stagnant for like 8.5 years in a cell, you walk out and everything is so fast that, things are flying. And when I went away, we only had cell phones, gangsters. I come home and there's like 8-year-old kids on the street. Yeah, hi, Mom, my cell phone. Yeah, and they got a laptop. And I'm like, what's a laptop? Oh, yeah, this is the World Wide Web. What's the World Wide Web? The whole thing happened while I was away. So I'm like, oh, my gosh, the whole world changed. And it took me a while to catch up with that. I wrote 2 books. I write them longhand. And then I have them transcribed onto a computer. So I still write longhand because I type with 1 finger. So I really never got up.
You'll
to speed.
get there.
I'll get there.
You'll
yeah,
get
I'll get there. Yeah, I'll get
One
there.
step at a time.
Yeah, exactly. One key at a time.
Exactly, Louis. Wow, that's extraordinary.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and then you came out, and now you're a practicing Jew.
Yeah. So I would consider myself an observant Jew. I mean, I don't know what denomination I fall into. I keep Shabbos. I daven in the morning. I believe wholeheartedly in Judaism. I read the Torah every day. I've written a Torah commentary, a complete Torah commentary. That's I don't know if anyone's ever going to publish it because it's so long, and they're going to say, "You, a Torah commentary? What do you got in common with Maimonides? Are you kidding me?" Or Rashi? But maybe one day, who knows? God willing, we'll see. Onkelos was a convert, so who knows?